there seem to be so few, I don't know, there seem to be so few professionals who have the farsightedness to wonder, where will these policies lead? What kinds of constricted circumstances are we bequeathing to the next generation? Each generation just blindly accepts the hand that's dealt to it as a consequence of inadvertence, as a consequence of the default policies that come down of having to deal with inadequate community health services, et cetera, et cetera. The idea of commercializing health care in the United States, when so much of it was already catastrophically commercial, from the pharmaceutical industries and so forth and onward. This is the logic, totalitarian economic logic of a certain kind of culture. We need to be providing a minimal level of medical treatment, medical oversight, and so forth. But in our culture, everything serves mammon. Everything is, the economy is really the earthly god around which this system revolves. And the consequence is we find ourselves with less and less human, moral say-so in the caliber and ultimate purposes that medical care, legal, educational, etc. Human values are getting sacrificed by the wayside in that process.
What is mammon exactly?
Mammon is it's a Old Testament term for the god of greed or wealth, or it's taken as an oblique way of referring to money as an idol.
Right.
So,
what exactly would be the purpose of a humanistic philosophy, or the divine nature of humanity as we exist at all?
Well, a humanistic philosophy, I almost want to resist the term in this sense. To speak of humanism is to speak of just one more arbitrary belief system. That's what bothers me about the term. If there were humanism, that would be something that humanists describe to, just as Catholics subscribe to Catholicism or whatever. Well, that's not what the issue should be. The issue should be not what we believe in, but what is really objectively true about what is good for human beings. You see, this is the play of our culture. When we frame an issue, we instantly start subverting it into the terms of subjectivism. Humanism is not the issue. The issue should be, what is human nature? What do human beings by nature need, desire, require, etc.? There should be some extra ideological, some transcendent or rational way of getting at the issues of human purposes, human fulfillment. What is the distinguishing logic, the system of purposes that governs human existence and makes it human? And under what conditions can that thrive, and under what conditions will it wither? These are questions about which we really don't ask ourselves. We have fads and fashions that come and go through, for example, the field of educational psychology. What's good for kids? How do kids want to learn? What should we take into account about the learning psychology of little children from age such and such onward? The difficulty is there's no independent or extra ideological, extra professional perspective on these matters. We don't look at these issues as something that requires the utmost self-criticism and objectivity. We are, I don't know how to put this, what we think of as psychology is less of a science and more of a way of bootlegging values, credos, et cetera, et cetera. We have a problem in that we want to be scientific, we want to be objective, and that means we do not permit ourselves to make value judgments. Therefore, these value judgments have got to be counterfeited. They have to pass under the noses of the censors, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, pop psychology fills that gulf. Psychology is our religion, our ersatz or substitute religion. The needs that human beings have to be evaluated in terms of what human beings mature into, both by nature and by historical imperative. But we aren't interested enough in that issue to look at what previous civilizations have taken to be the completeness or the maturation of a human being. We are content that human beings should be consumers. We're content that they should remain at the level of a child for their entire lives. And if you saw human beings from the standpoint, for example, of a doctor who is still treating 60, 70, 80-year-old people who are as dependent as a child, they don't take the pains to educate themselves independently on their own health needs, their own psychiatric needs, etc. Really, we have the logic of that concept of the asylum society playing itself out. So much of what passes for self-help and for New Age culture and fetishisms about this sort of diet or that sort of guru or whatever, these are the consequences of a basically pathetic patient trying to doctor itself. We're looking for some way in the field of popular opinions to cure the kind of irrationality, short-sightedness, the perspectivism, the ideologism of a culture that really doesn't give us much resources with which to criticize ourselves, gain distance, gain some what I think can't be called anything else but philosophical substance. I mean, we're more concerned about amassing our possessions, our consumable goods. We care far too much about what we have and far too little about the kinds of issues that we're able to master by means of our values, our ideas, and understanding.
Aren't all these flaws sins of the ego? In other words, our own psychology telling us that this is what's important, and it shouldn't suppression of our own mental state? And
that is a large part of it. It's the reduction of horizons. Moderns live in a culture that encourages them to think of themselves as monads, as little social atoms. And the ego is precisely that aspect of ourselves, our consciousness, at least our self-consciousness, in a limited degree. Our ego is ourself as we are psychologically or feelingly aware of ourselves. There's much more going on in us, of course, than just those acts and transactions of consciousness. I mean, someone who has become creative, learned to work as a writer, artist, musician, realizes that there is a kind of intercourse with the unconscious that can be harnessed and put to work for creative purposes, for expanding the zone of what is known or understood. Well, that doesn't count for anything in the thinking of most people. Their unconsciousness is something they believe they can just as well live without, in spite of the fact, I don't know, in spite of the fact that, of course, when they shop, you know, when they relate to other people, when they have conversations, they are almost entirely goaded and prodded by subconscious motives. I mean, everyone is haunted by an enormous domain of barely articulable or inarticulable tacit motives, presuppositions, implications, etc. We make a mistake, which is very obvious. We make a mistake in supposing that we are what we know ourselves to be. I mean, it just couldn't be put more simply, I think. The riches of traditional literature, traditional religion, philosophy, culture in general, poetry, music, the riches of the whole system of the humanities, the universe of the humanities, consisted in the fact that it heightened our sensitivity to those covert dimensions to which moderns are contented to live oblivious. We as moderns are trained to live in a greatly reduced cosmos in which everything is a fact, known, provable, evident, indisputable, etc. Well, the most important things in existence are not facts. There's no way to convert them into facts. Facts are for trivial-minded people. Facts are for people who are pathologically literal-minded, who have no myth, no religion, no poetry in them. And this sounds absurd, or it sounds ironic or something to moderns. To say that literal-mindedness is a form of disease is something that moderns are too literal-minded to be able to comprehend. There is a richness of imagination and sensitivity to the implicit domains, which is the proper inheritance of a cultivated human being. Moderns don't miss it. They've been educated hardly even to suspect that it exists. Well, that reduction of our world from the larger universe of things that are subliminal, things that are superliminal, I mean, that provided a way for human beings to become aware of how much more there is in natural existence, in divine existence, and even in human existence, beyond what is within the reach of ego. I mean, I make an example strictly for the sake of its suggestive power. As much of a difference as there is between classical music, which has far more going on in it that could ever be reduced to a singable melody. As much as is going on in classical music, the whole complex modular universe of themes and transactions and transitions, contrasting that with the world of popular music, which is essentially music that's been processed to appeal to egos. Okay? It's got to have not just a consciously appealing melodic line, but hopefully something that will so etch itself into your memory that someone can use it to sell chewing gum or cigarettes or whatever.